Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Depths Graphics Edition for E3 2013. I can't believe we're still talking about E3 2013, but there's a lot of stuff to go through, and I am joined here by our tech wizards, game developer extraordinaires who are all working in AAA games in the gaming industry. Now, these are just our 3D guys in the office who dig 3D and like talking about this stuff. Mr. Marco Rosado, Mr. Dan Rackison, and Mr. Leland Russell is joining us this time. So there's a ton of videos we could talk about from E3, but we're really focusing on the ones that I think really demonstrate what the next gen is potentially capable of doing. And today we're going to talk about the Dark Sorcerer, which might be a little irregular because it is kind of boring in parts, just thematically, not graphically. It's very impressive throughout, but it is I think it's 12 minutes total, so we'll skip ahead a little bit, but let's get into it.
Shrouded by darkness.
So Quantic Dream did a similar thing with the PS3. Remember that? The audition demo?
Oh, sure.
With the girl with the gun.
And Kara was the same kind of tech demo. So we're not actually going to play this game, but this is just demonstrative of what else he has in store. Which is interesting because I wonder if he was going to do a fantasy thing. Has David Cage ever done a fantasy game or anything involving wizards and spells? So flames and faces are the big thing that I take from here. Obviously, everything that's going on in his face, his expressiveness, the closeness to the actual actor that played the role, and lots of fire particles. Mm-hmm. So what do we want to talk about first?
Well, according to what I've read upon this, the environment lighting is completely dynamic. Like when it switches from this to the set, it's actually it's not like they edited it out and cut in a set piece that they have separate. All this is being cut in real time within the game engine. So the environment, the set environment, and this environment are loaded at the same time. It just switches dynamically between the two.
Using HDRI lighting maps to do that, switching between the high dynamic range images.
And I think the reason the lighting is probably more noticeable is that the actual textures have subsurface scattering pretty much all over, from the candles to the skin, to everything.
Subsurface scattering is light that passes through an object, and looking at that object from the other side. So you're seeing the light scattering, literally scattering through the object.
When you put a flashlight on your finger and you see through your finger, you see the...
Yeah. Or in your mouth, through your cheek. You can see it.
That is subsurface.
Or wax is a very common object that they would use it on. Even this guy's skin shader has it. I mean,
that's how they got to the next level of skin shaders, to make them look more accurate, was by creating several layers to the skin, like we actually have. A lot of things in 3D emulate real life, so that's exactly what we're looking at. We're looking at the oil and the skin and the blood and everything.
Yeah, the Goblin has over 30 shaders alone, just on the skin.
So speaking of the Goblin, I mean, what's going on here? Obviously, do we think this is a short person that did this role, or was this kind of like a combination of a couple things, maybe like mocap, and then they just kind of created him out of that, shrunk someone and gave them longer arms, or how do you think this guy was put together?
Oh, this is all mocap, and it's the animation that's being captured is just being ported into the character rig and basically being played back in real time with the engine running all the shaders and everything on top of it. I mean, I believe that this is running real time on the hardware that they, the hardware to do this has been around. So.
But his actual frame is inhuman. So how do you take something, since you're more of the animation side, how do you take something that is made for a frame that is more human-like and apply it to something with arms that go down to his knees?
Yeah, that Goblin is made up of almost 400 bones. Just him,
the thing is, they're grabbing the rotation and the translation of the controllers for the rig, it applies on each bone. So the point that they're recording in space in the motion capture room is being put onto, the shoulder bone, and each joint is translated. Then you can deform that rig later, or you can have that rig, at a different size. It's probably a shorter actor, to answer the question.
So particles here. We got lots of fire. What is most impressive about this fire?
Particles are the thing in this new generation of consoles, right?
Yeah,
Every
definitely.
demo we've seen from from the what was the Deep Down demo to this one to like.
Even Killer Instinct, Patrick Morales sent out that GIF of the two Jago or Jago, his attack like hitting each other, and it was just this billions of sparks falling all over the place.
It's this combination, whereas in the 3D program, since I work a lot with particles and dynamics, the software itself has gotten much better at handling particles. And now our technology has advanced to a point that almost we're kind of blowing our own minds with what we're able to cache and see, because it's gone from like, we can show like 20 in a loop to like millions at a time interacting with you. So it's going to be very visually impressive this round. The dynamics alone, like we were saying with the fire, even fluid dynamics pre-cached with all this RAM, it's going to be very startling what we're going to be able to do.
Dan, did you see something?
I just saw just the amount of characters on screen when they increased all the goblins. And that's just increasing the amount of polygons in one scene playing back at one time.
They did that on purpose.
Obviously. I mean,
that goblin is made out of we read up on it like 700,000 tries.
So yes, tessellated, a very highly tessellated model.
So it's interesting. One thing that strikes me as potentially odd about this gameplay demo is that we saw a lot of things from E3 that it almost seems the more you're changing up your environment, the more you're demonstrating what the graphical potential of your system. So when we saw the Battlefield demo, we were in the city, we were in the jungle, we were in the desert, we were in all these different locations. Even the demo they brought to E3, you're in the water, and then you're on the deck of a ship, and then you're in a submarine or on a battleship, and so you get interiors, exteriors. This video of 12 minutes of just the same thing over and over and over again, the same room. So it is interesting that was a very clear decision from David Cage. Like, what do you think the bonuses are of demonstrating an engine and just sticking to one environment?
Well, they can kind of do everything in the environment. They're just throwing things in there. I mean, like they go through different demos throughout the whole thing. I think that you still see the potential of the engine within this demo. Well, you don't need to necessarily be under the water to see how it can handle that kind of environment.
It's not just one environment. I mean, it is one environment, like the stairs in the back and the candles and all that, but like it's lit completely different. So they did different things with it. Like, look at that.
Was that a cabbage on the table?
Well, it's interesting that the globe that's on the table has the same green backing as the stuff, I'm guessing, and so that when you actually get into the world, I think it's glowing. So that's to do that effect. It's interesting that you see the studio, because I mean some of those green screens in the background have some pretty nasty wrinkles in them. It's like clearly you wouldn't be able to key anything there, especially that one in the back left. Like interesting style choice they are intentionally putting the wrinkles in there. I'm assuming the stage doesn't actually exist anywhere. Like they never actually built it.
Yeah, it's 100% out of engine, I believe. They're going back and forth out of the actual system itself. And I think the reason that they isolated it to a room is because we can nitpick it. We can sit here and look at, we can watch the feathers on his jacket and the smoke, which is okay, honestly. It's not that
You
great.
could take the characters out of this environment, and I would believe it's a real place. Like that's one of the most photorealistic real-time environments I've ever seen.
And it's easy to make it dark and epic and put fire everywhere and kind of get away with putting things in the shadows, whereas they keep turning the house lights on here and you get to look at everything as it is.
They can also focus on imperfections. Like we always kind of have the tendency to make fun of Battlefield 4 when we get like a lens flare, and we know we can't see lens flare with the human eye. But here you are looking through a camera. This is being recorded by both the professional camera that's shooting with all the effects and everything, and some kind of on set camera or something that's getting the kind of candid moments like this. But you mentioned the smoke, Lee. What's not impressed with the smoke?
I mean, it looks good, but smoke is always one of those really difficult things to do, and that is clearly particle smoke as opposed to fluid smoke. And fluid smoke always looks better. It always has a better roll to it. Some of the fire you can see is fluids here, but yeah, smoke is always a difficult thing, and it always looks like it's a texture projected on a particle, which is what it is. But it's good motion, so I'm nitpicking it, but that's not cinematic quality.
I would say, like a lot of this, like the skin on the characters, it looks really good, but it still has a kind of a composited look to it. It's a little milky, and some of the shadows turn out being harsher. In a darker environment like this, where it's more contrasty, it tends to look better. But when it goes back to the green screen environment, their skin tone just doesn't have that same. I mean, if I were to really nitpick the shaders for the hardware, I would say, it's not handling that exactly like how you would get out of a software render. You might get a much better result.
Now, when you talk about particles, because we're seeing lots of fancy stuff flying all over the place, generating these particles from a visual perspective isn't that tough. It's just the system handling all of that stuff going on without completely having a heart attack. Like, that's the next gen part of it. Like, we've had particles forever, particles like this. Like, I've seen little sparklies like that. It's just actually seeing it in real time. I think the Unreal demo was like the particle demo.
It's the difference really between particles that you see and particles that interact. Is whether or not the thing is actually calculating what the particle is doing, or if it's just showing it to you. Because I mean, these, like that big whirlwind or whatever, if it wasn't actually interacting, and I couldn't tell if it was or wasn't, but it's just a texture or a pre-cached, a visual display that it's just running an animation for you. But the ones that actually hit the wall and bounce off, or that demo we saw where they all fall into the city and roll off the bridges, that's where it gets heavy, for sure.
Well, no, I think that these are definitely real-time particles that are calculating in the system, because you can take the camera then at any point and move it, and I mean like in game, so you can look anywhere and you'll float around those. Those particles are floating around in 3D space. So I don't believe that they're being
You
composited
can have 3D
flat.
cache though. They're not composited flat, but you can cache particles in a 3D form. I mean, fluid cache is a 3D cache. It's still a cached animation. If it was to hit the wizard and fly off, then it would be being calculated in real time, but it's not.
Well,
it was rolling around him.
The thing about David Cage games is that most of what you see on screen is cinematic, like you can't interact with it unless you're controlling the character, and his games look better than most games, like Quantic Dream games, because they're barely running any AI. They're barely running multiple characters. Like, it's mostly like one environment and 3 characters, and the system itself, that looks really good, the water. The system itself is not busy handling like backdoor things that you're not really seeing, like dynamic, like AI and, multiplayer data coming in or anything like that.
It's interesting you're talking about particles not only existing, but that they're reacting, and we have this like central gust of wind that's swirling in a circle, and not only are all the particles, the balls of fire that he's dodging, that they're all swimming around, but you can actually see the pentagram on the floor, that the flames are all curving in that direction. So it's interesting. Pretty much everything, even at the fire in the pillars, and the blue flames that's coming out of this doorway here that are all kind of swarming in. To me, just from not, having a deep understanding of how all this stuff is working, it looks more organic to me. And it's interesting, one thing I keep thinking of, I remember playing Final Fantasy XI for the first time and casting a spell and just being like, my character vanished. I don't even see what happened. It was just this giant purple ring of, craziness. And like when you get, you look at any gameplay video for like Rift or Final Fantasy XIV or anything, and like you get 3 mage users on top of each other, and like I can't tell what's going on. I mean, it's just a firework explosion. So it's interesting to not only get this level of intensity of all the different kind of graphics, but I feel there's more depth to it. Like I can more easily distinguish the different elements, like what is just a light particle and a flame particle. These characters don't necessarily get lost in the lighting. Like I can still see them; they're still defined. So I wonder if that we'll see that in the next gen, kind of this deeper depth of being able to look through all the craziness and all the fireworks and actually see the mechanics of what's going on.
I think ultimately that's going to be up to the design teams. I mean, it's going to obviously, like, the quality is going to be much better if the game developers can do this. I mean, this is the tools they have. These are the tools they have that have access to. They can do whatever they want. I don't know if that's more of a compositional thing in game, like when they created it, or the limitation of the older systems.
With these type of demos, like it's the most impressive visuals you get out of consoles, like when entering a new generation, are screenshots, like those high-res screenshots, and cinematics like this, like the real time. But the what I would rather see developers focus on, with this new hardware is, yeah, making things look good, of course, but I don't mind if things don't look as good as long as they move and they behave and they interact really well. Like the amount of the animation fidelity of the characters, like when you're just running around, the AI, like having like really robust AI, like really intelligent enemies or NPCs. That's something that games don't usually like focus on, and when they do, like for example, like when Halo came out, the first Halo game, like the AI in that game was amazing, and yeah, like the visuals were great. They weren't spectacular. They were great for the time, but it really helped the gameplay, and if they spent more time focusing on having that CPU process better AI and a better environment that's interactive, that's destructible, that's malleable to the player, that the environment reacts to the player more than the player reacting to the environment, then that it will truly be the next step. Because if you're just pushing more polys and better graphics, like yeah, you get more immersion, but as soon as those characters start moving, like in an EA Sports game, like LeBron looks awesome, but then you start moving those characters and they look all weird. Yeah, it's getting there. It's slowly we're focusing more on animation and AI, but it's still, I think, graphics and getting those screenshots are like what developers are seeking most nowadays.